Welcome back to Trinidad and Tobago. Well, government has removed most of the remaining COVID-19 restrictions which have been in place since the first case of the virus hit Trinidad and Tobago on March 12, 2020. On Saturday, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, he announced changes at the news conference held at the Diplomatic Center as he notes the country is in a much better place than it was in December last year. That was when COVID-19 deaths were accelerating to just about 100 per day. This morning, we're joined by Chief Executive Officer of AMCHAM T&T, to give us the Chamber's perspective on the announcement and, of course, how it will affect the business sector. Well, Mr. Tiwari has not yet logged on to our Zoom video call. So in the meantime, I'll just share with you what the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, what they are doing to address, what they see as a spike in events or the gold rush of events, fetes and gatherings, and they expect that to take place from April 4th. And that will be the date by which most of those restrictions will be removed. Now, Acting Commissioner of Police McDonald Jacobs, he says there's an expectation to be a gold rush of sorts. Yes, gatherings will no longer be limited. Beaches and rivers will be opened without restrictions. And of course, there will be persons holding events and fetes. So we, the TTPS, will have to change our methods in how we do our policing. This week, we will be planning our way forward for that. Our strategies will have to change. And while we expect some challenges, we don't foresee many problems. And we believe we will be able to meet the changes and return to normalcy that the citizenry have been calling for. So, of course, the Prime Minister didn't actually detail those restrictions which would be removed. He, of course, says when the new public health regulations are released, and that ought to be sometime before April 4th. It's usually the day before April 4th, so maybe April 3rd. When that is released, citizens will be able to see what is still there and then be able to determine what is not there. I was, of course, at that press briefing, and I did ask the Prime Minister about being able to consume alcohol in public, play loud music in public, and throw parties, fetes, boat rides, if you may. Those events had previously been barred, and he, of course, said you must, if you have to do so from April 4th, you have to do so cautiously. So that would signal that the entertainment sector has, in fact, been reopened. Well, I understand Chief Executive Officer of AMCHAM T&T, Mr. Nirad Tiwari, has joined us. Very good morning to you, Mr. Tiwari.
Hi, good morning, Urvashi. Good morning to the team in studio and, of course, to all your viewers and listeners.
Of course, the perfect place to start, AMCHAM T&T's, your general sentiments over the announcement on Saturday.
Well, I think overall we're happy. Our members are in a state where they would like to return to some sense of normalcy, and the numbers support opening up somewhat. So we are glad that we're starting to return to normalcy. I think the travel changes are very welcome. In particular, we look forward to the removal of the travel pass in totality, because that is an administrative burden that probably needs not be there anymore. But overall, I think we're happy with the direction in which we're going, and we hope that the numbers continue to support the total removal of restrictions.
So interesting you would mention that measure in particular, Mr. Tiwari, because that had been generally skimmed over by the public in terms of the announcements made by the Prime Minister. Could you just expand a little bit and tell us how the removal of travel pass you expect will spur or encourage business in the country? And of course, the entry requirement, it's now antigen versus PCR.
Yeah, well, I mean, as most people would know, a PCR test is more expensive, and my understanding is that the type of PCR test that was required to enter Trinidad and Tobago was very specific. So there are various types of tests. So it's not that it will spur business per se, but having additional restrictions or additional steps is always a disincentive to doing business, or makes it a little more difficult. And, you know, as a small country, as an island, our business people have to travel fairly frequently to do business. And the additional step of having to get a PCR test and fill in the travel pass and the like does create, more stress than is necessary at this point in time, especially if we're doing away with safe zones and vaccine mandates and the like.
In that case, what type of visitors would you expect to now enter T&T? Would it be the tourists who come for recreation?
Well, our tourism really has been historically business travelers. Mm-hmm. So the majority of our visitors have been business travelers. You would recall, and I think you all asked the Prime Minister specifically at the conference about unvaccinated travelers, unvaccinated non-nationals, and he made it clear that at this point in time, the country is not open to unvaccinated non-nationals. So, I expect that what we would see is more business people coming in, hopefully. And of course, that is linked to what is happening in Trinidad and Tobago with regard to
the economic landscape.
Improvement. Yeah, exactly. The improvement of the business climate. And so we look forward to this being a step toward focusing on strengthening the economy through reforms and through dialogue and greater collaboration with the government on the things that are required to make us even more attractive to doing business.
So I want to get to that a little later on in the interview. But for now, let's talk about the safe zones. So safe zones are to be removed. Government never got to implement it in the public sector. Would you say that initiative failed or it served its purpose for that time? What is your perspective on that?
Okay, so we're talking about two slightly different things, right? The safe zones for the entertainment, restaurant, hospitality sector, and the policy or the proposed policy for the public sector, as I understand it, was a quasi-safe zone. And by quasi, I mean employees would need to be vaccinated, but not
clients,
customers, right? So in terms of the restaurants and the entertainment sector, I know that there are very strong views on this one, and some people, like my colleague Peter George, have been very, very vocal on it. Mm-hmm. Our view is that at the time that the measures were implemented, we needed to send very strong signals around vaccination and to put in place a policy mix of semi-coercion and encouragement at the same time. So we weren't unhappy with the measures that were implemented. We still maintain that vaccination is the best way to protect oneself and one's loved ones from this virus, notwithstanding the fact that it appears that the strains that are circulating in Trinidad and Tobago are less aggressive or cause less severe illness. A big part of that, no doubt, is helped by the fact that a little more than 50% of the population is vaccinated, and then there would be some natural immunity. So we think the measures had been appropriate, and we're not unhappy that they are now being adjusted.
Would you say the removal of these measures come April 4th will generally affect the entertainment sector?
Of course they will. I mean, and I don't think it's a coincidence that they're being adjusted just as the school Easter vacation begins and the Easter weekend is upon us. And I think that in particular, you're seeing already Tobago businesses are calling for more flights. So we saw what happened last year when there was some easing of restrictions around Easter. And it really is now up to us individually to manage our behavior within the context of people needing to get back to some level of normalcy. But normalcy 1 year is very different to normalcy 5 years hence. The way we use the internet, for example, is not what we used to do 15, 20 years ago. So we do have to adjust our behavior somewhat. and the law now is not there to adjust it for us.
Has AMCHAM's membership diminished over the pandemic?
Actually, we grew slightly, I'm happy to say.
That's very interesting. What would you attest to that growth?
I would like to think the team at AMCHAM has been doing a good job in trying to service the membership. We have a really dedicated team. I do think, business does what business needs to do, and that is to try and find more business. And membership organizations and chambers such as AMCHAM and the other chambers are tools in that arsenal, especially when you do not have the opportunity to interact and network in the way that you were used to. So I think that some members or some businesses are looking for additional ways to connect, to meet, to learn about what's happening from other businesses, and that in part is a contributor to our growth. Also, our focus on technology and building a tech sector in Trinidad and Tobago, I think has really assisted in that regard as well.
So most of the new members would come from which sectors?
Tech, but also the traditional sectors. You have energy services, construction, and the like.
So outside of AMCHAM, we're getting reports from other chambers that smaller businesses, they have exited the economy or they're not actively participating. What do you think can be done to spur business activity in Trinidad and Tobago?
Yeah, I mean, so it's nothing different to what we've been saying for a long time, which is we have to find ways to reinstill confidence. Confidence is the key driver of business activity. People have to believe that there is, even if things are tough now, better days are coming, so that they can take risk now for later. I think also, though, we're such a divided society and so negative. Everything that is said is met with negativity, and the polarization of the politics and the link back to people supporting a statement or not based on their political affiliation really holds us back, and it actually undermines our collective general desire to see a better Trinidad and Tobago. And so we have to become more dispassionate in our discourse, and the politicians, particularly from the two major parties, have to set the tone in creating that climate where we could have a dialogue, where we could have disagreements on policy, but in a constructive way. And the business community has been trying very hard to contribute to that, not just AMCHAM, but the other chambers as well. And I think if we can do that, then we can agree on some fundamental positions. What would we like to see and why? How will this benefit the citizens? And then we could get into the specifics of the reforms that are required and how we can work together to say, you know what, we know these three things are really important, but will be really contentious. Let's create some consensus around that and get them done in the interest of Trinidad and Tobago. And once things start to happen like that, and people see progress and people see forward movement, you're going to get the confidence back again, and that will encourage more and more businesses, small, big, medium, micro, to continue. I think the entertainment sector reopening will have an impact on consumer spending somewhat, but that can only happen if people have jobs, if people have money. And so in the coming months, we may need to look at how there can be some form of stimulus, direct or indirect, to the MSME sector.
Let's revert to that business traveler. Why would businessmen or travelers come to Trinidad and Tobago now? What makes us still attractive?
Trinidad and Tobago will always be unique. Trinidad
Why
and
are you
Tobago,
smiling, Mr. Tiwari?
Because I feel like sometimes we forget who we are and what we have, and who we are and what we have doesn't change by whoever's in government or whatever our political affiliation or view is. And I keep mentioning the politics because I think that's the biggest thing keeping us back. But I mean, so our location, our capacity for adaptability, for innovation, our creativity, our friendliness, the way our people are. I mean, y'all would have carried stories with ICOR opening its third location, its third BPO location last week. And one of the things that the ICOR VP who was leading that said, is the happiness and the warmth of the Trinbagonian who goes into that business, who as an employee translates and makes Trinidad and Tobago unique. And I think these are really, really important things. I mean, we sort of poo-poo our infrastructure and the like, but again, using that as a single example, and I'm sure that people would point to other negative things, but ICOR has more uptime in Trinidad and Tobago than any of its other locations around the world. And these are important things. So Trinidad and Tobago is a difficult place to do business in some ways, but it's a great place to do business in other ways. And if we can get even more collaboration to unlock or to untangle some of those things that make it less attractive and maximize on our strengths, we can be in a great place in 3 to 5 years.
So I guess the genesis of my question really came from the fact that we're seeing so many members of our local private sector, they're going across to Guyana. So I'm thinking foreign businesses, why come to Trinidad when you can go to Guyana, which is a growing economy? So what are your thoughts?
For the same reason we doubles from multiple doubles vendors.
Different taste, different experience, different types of
some
chutney.
Have different condiments.
Yeah.
Some have better bara, some have better chana. The point is, I mean, businesses have to diversify, right? So for a business to be resilient, you need multiple major customers, you need multiple markets, you need multiple sources of inputs, and you need multiple markets, right? The customers in different segments and in different jurisdictions, ideally, to make your business resilient. So those things are not incompatible. So you can invest in Trinidad and Tobago and growth in Trinidad and Tobago as Rams Logistics is, for example, while at the same time invest in expanding in Guyana or anywhere else, for that matter, because it makes good sense to make the business more resilient and stronger.
Should more be done by government to foster better ties between Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana?
Yes, I think so. And I think that, again, we sometimes lose sight of who we are. And Trinidad and Tobago has always been philosophically a regional leader and a country in the region who believes in regionalism and the importance of regionalism. And so certainly some more could be done, but I think that goes both ways. And, at the business level, that's happening. And I think that, in time we'll see some greater movement, at least at the political level. I mean, I don't know what will happen after tomorrow night. Hopefully the Soca Warriors will perform as well as they did on Friday. And I mean, if that happens, I don't know what the Guyanese team will say.
Yeah, but I think I like that point you touched on about our national team and so on, because nationalism, that is something that I feel we really have to continue to develop in our country, that sense of patriotism and so on. So these are all little reasons and meanings for us to come together. Nirad Tiwari, CEO of AMCHAM Trinidad and Tobago, let me thank you so much for joining us and of course sharing your views as the Prime Minister announces a major reopening of the Trinidad and Tobago economy from April 4th.
Thanks for having me, Urvashi. All the best to you and yours, everybody. Stay safe, continue to mask up, wash your hands. Get vaccinated if you're not. Please, now you can't say the government is forcing you. You have the choice. Do the wise thing.
Thank you very much again, and of course, all the best to you as well. Well, it's now time to remind you, our viewers, of those COVID-19 protocols. Wear a mask over your nose and mouth when you go out into the public. Keep your distance at least 6 feet from others. Stay at home if you're ill. Wash your hands often with soap and water, or you can use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Cough into tissue or the crook of your elbow. Avoid touching your face. Sanitize hard surfaces, which are tabletops, handrails, doorknobs, and trolleys as often as possible.